Hello and welcome to the ComSpark magazine interview series. I'm Derek Strauss with Gavroche, and we're partnering with ComSpark magazine in a series of interviews. Today, I've got the pleasure of talking with Eku Williams. Eku has a great deal of excellent experience and background in a number of different areas, complementary areas. And I'm sure he'll bring that out as we talk through some of the interesting topics. We're going to have this as a two-part interview. So I'd encourage you to watch out for the second one that's going to be coming up as well. Both interviews are going to be around the topic of cybersecurity. And I'm sure that is a topic that everyone is really interested in. It's certainly become a hot topic for all people involved with data and analytics and for responsibility in those areas. For the last couple of years, it's really become prominent and in the limelight. So, we're delighted to have Eku because he's got some excellent insights that he can share with us. And Eku, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So Eku, we want to jump straight into this and start looking specifically at vulnerability management to protect data. What is the importance of vulnerability management to protect data? And as you talk about that topic, perhaps you can also, give us a little bit of background in terms of your exposure to that topic.
Okay, sure. Well, as far as my exposure to the topic, I've been in IT for over 20 years, and that spreads across from being in business analyst, project management, process improvement, coding, doing some development, and as well as being an IT auditor as well. So being in those roles and then being a liaison from both the business side and then the IT side and really understanding risk has given me a lot of exposure to what it is to risk vulnerability management and what we really need to take care of as an organization. So the reality is, from that plethora of experience that I've had over the years, it just really makes sense that in today's time, we really need to pay attention to what's going on in our organization. And the reality is that data and the network, that's the lifeline of our organizations, right? Look at the network as the veins that runs throughout our body. And the data, that's the heart, that's the heartbeat. We can't move or survive without either one in our organizations. And if we don't have access to that, or if that's cut off, there goes the organization. So that is where really we need to pay attention to and really know how to manage our vulnerabilities in today's time. Because currently, if you watch the news, there are tons of breaches that are currently going on. And it's really being scary because these cyber attacks are increasing every day. I would say the bad actors are one step ahead. From a cybersecurity standpoint, we are really in a retro active mode because these bad actors are proactive, right? They're ahead of it. They know what's coming down. They know what type of security are being played or being utilized in organizations. So they're one step ahead of us when it comes to that. And if you're unfamiliar with ransomware, it's malicious software that is put on your network. It locks the data down and it makes it inaccessible for anyone to see or utilize. And then, like any ransom, they put a price tag on that data before they release it or encrypt it. And majority of the time, the bad actors, they just want the payout, but we don't know for sure if you can get that data back because they still have it. They still have access to it. So it's one of those things and times that we really, as organizations grow, we really need to pay attention. What is vulnerability management? As far as what are your weaknesses or gaps in your security, measures, protocols, And this is for all lines of business, from banking to retail to electronic processing, healthcare, education. You and I as individuals, what are those gaps? What are those weaknesses that we have? And how can we protect that? Currently, I would say, if you look at the news right now, one of the main ones that were in the news, Colonial Pipeline, they had to pay out $2.3 million in Bitcoin, still over 100 gigabytes of data. You have social media that has PII information, and that's your Facebook, your Instagram, that's our LinkedIn. These are things that we use every day, that these are apps, these are websites that we think are secure, that we are entrusting with our personal information, and they're being breached. You have restaurants now, you have T-Mobile that was just breached, school systems, even now hospitals, because of HIPAA, EPHI, they have an abundance amount of information and data that we entrust with them. And if we as organizations don't take the accurate steps to prevent those things from happening, reputational risk becomes a piece. The trust in us as individuals, we lose, and then you just overall the potential loss or harm and vulnerabilities in those environments due to the risk and threats. We have to look at that. What's the downtime? What's the people time? How much does it cost for a network to be up when it's gone? So these are certain things that we really have to think about when we think about vulnerability management and putting the proper controls in place to make sure those things don't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, as you're going through that, I was thinking back over the last couple of decades, and a lot of my background has been in the financial industry. And of course, financial industry are very aware of vulnerability management and have probably been some of the ones in the forefront of breaches and, being publicly embarrassed and losing, public confidence in them because of those types of things. And then, of course, the retail guys came in pretty soon afterwards. But as you made the point, very, very valid and striking, is that no one's immune. This cuts across every single sector that there is. And, at the individual level, right up to the top corporate kind of level, this is a major concern that no one can afford to, just kind of brush off anymore. This is something that has to be center stage, with a big fat limelight, blasting on it.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously in a situation like this where you have, something that is absolutely key to an organization's, longevity and its reputation and so on, and just the protection of data, it lends itself to a situation where you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of voices saying, oh, okay, so this is a major problem that everyone's seeing now. How are we going to address it? And you've got all these different voices coming out and saying, well, you got to do this, or you got to do that, you got to do that. And it gets confusing, right? And it takes a while for things to kind of settle down and all the dust to settle and all the voices to kind of start singing in harmony. And for best practices to start emerging. So, I'd be really interested in your insights in terms of, what are some of the best practices that you're seeing that are starting to emerge to address this whole area?
Well, a lot of the best practices now really begins to be proactive in doing assessments of your network. If that's quarterly, if that's yearly, but really take time and either work with a third-party vendor. If you're a large-scale organization, hopefully you are able to monitor that on an effective basis. But really conduct, look at your internal, external scans, look at those endpoints of your vulnerabilities, because these vulnerability scans will allow you to see the risks and gaps in your network. It can come from your endpoints, firewalls that's enabled or disabled. Password configurations. Are passwords strict enough as far as, we'll just say 6 characters should it be stronger? Are we locking down computers? You have an abundance of things that these scans can really look at as far as risks are concerned. Are there any gaps as far as external network? HTTPS, are your websites secure because you're passing information back? So is that information being encrypted? That's one major thing that we can look at. And then you really want to assess the overall weakness of your organization's private network. In healthcare, you have Internet of Things. So you're not just looking at the network, but you have these hospital devices that are connecting externally and internally, and you have people's health at stake. People are using different devices that when they go into work, they're connecting to the network, but then they're taking off, right? They're going home because we're in a work from home environment. So we have to be able to look at that, because that gateway of the VPN, you don't want to get backdoored. And then now someone is able to encrypt and get that information in on the other side. Look at network. Really, one of the other biggest things is really how much data, what is your data worth, right? What is that data exposure? Because when you're able to take a close look at that, it's imperative of understanding that, because that is what the bad actors are really looking at. And that is what they can lock down. And essentially, that's how they're getting the ransomware. That's how they're able to come up with these huge dollar amounts, because they know how much you're worth, right? They know the information that is there, how vital it is. If it's financial data to personal data, social security numbers, credit card numbers. These are all things that really are able to be brought out through these vulnerability scans, through assessments, through conversations with your cyber team, if there is one internally. Look at reports, create reports, do risk analysis, look at gaps. Really, what are your strategies around that needs to be put in place? Do you have policies? Do you have procedures as well? Because all these things will allow you to essentially put those controls in place and begin to allow you to think more proactive as far as mitigating these risks overall. Once you're able to kind of mitigate some of these risks, then you're a little bit stronger from a security posture, right? So, if you have a CISO, some organizations don't have a CISO, but there's opportunities out there that you can work with consulting firms to kind of put those strategic plans in place. And then overall, education. The reality is over 50% of malware, ransomware that's executed is because someone clicked on an email. That one email that a friend sent or that looked familiar. You click on that, and now that executable is on your network. Now someone gets to sit 3 to 6 months and really get to watch and engage how your director is typing emails to another employee. People are really studying these as bad actors. And then because of that, they're able to manipulate and even mirror an email very much like the language of, say, a director. And now they're sending you an email saying, we need this invoice to this account number, using very similar language. And if you don't have that knowledge and education around that, now you're sending off a check for $1,000, $100,000, $1 million. And now that money's gone. It's boom, vanished in the air somewhere, right? So that's just one piece, or just sending files of data. But people aren't thinking about this because they're just working every day, right? So you get an email from director, I'm just going to do exactly what he says, but not really paying attention that it was an extra L in that, or they didn't hover, because you're not thinking about that. But it's really that education piece that's very, very essential, because it's human error. And when people think breaching, how did they get to the network? Well, that's one of the main causes in that. And that's on top of really just securing your network from that standpoint. And then going forward, other means of just making sure you're secure is performing IT audits. What's your control posture? When's the last time you've done a risk assessment or even tested controls in your environment to make sure overall, you're in a good place. Because if you're not, then these are red flags that can be mitigated and can be worked on a continuous basis to lower that risk, so you can be more secure in your environment. And then long term, you hate to say it, but really invest in different systems, invest in security or vulnerability scans. If not, own it or bring someone in from a third party that can do it. Make sure patch management is in place. You want to continuously have updates done. Invest in SIM tools. And then, the reality is, what's your backup plan? Do you have an incident response plan to recover this data if it was to get lost? Is it on premise or off premise? These are all things that go into vulnerability management that can make you a stronger organization going forward.
Yeah, wow, that's a comprehensive list of things to do for sure. And I particularly, the thing that really resonated with me is that it's everyone's responsibility in the organization, and therefore the education side, educating everyone in terms of,
right.
What do you have to watch out for? What are the traps that typically are being set that you're going to need to watch out for? And I guess in many ways, those things change from day to day, from second to second. As you said, the bad actors are a step ahead of us. So, really something that we ought to be on our toes about, and be watching for. So, yeah, that's some really good advice, and thanks for that. Now, for our listeners, just to again reiterate what I said up front, is this is a 2-part series with Eku, and we're going to be covering it. A related topic in the next session. We'll be looking specifically at cyber liability insurance, and I'm sure that Eku's got some really great insights for us on that as well. So we're going to end this first interview off now, but to the audience again, please watch out for the next exciting installment from Eku Williams. And Eku, thanks again for joining me today.
No problem. My pleasure.
And for the rest of you guys out there, please also remember to visit comspark.tech for additional interviews with other folks as well.